We use wrestling as the platform, yes, to bring people to watch an event, to tell them about Jesus. Yes, wrestling is the entertainment part. Yes, wrestling is the platform. Yes, wrestling is what we see, just like a movie. Yes, you watch all that to get to the message. Say juvenile justice centers, some of them kids, they're there for a reason, and sometimes they're there and you got to do something quick to get their attention. What pro wrestling really is, it is
When did you realize that pro wrestling could be more than entertainment, but it could have an impact?
Truthfully, if I think back to when I was a kid, I was a huge pro wrestling fan, of course. But I remember as a kid, even not only watching wrestling, but like I had my wrestling ring and my wrestling action figures, or I'd go out on a trampoline. And I could spend time involved in pro wrestling in that little world, and my world around me didn't exist for that time frame. And it was like, that was my outlet. Some people like to, hunt, fish, whatever, play video games. I loved wrestling. And as young as I can remember as a kid, I can just immerse myself in that. And that was my world I was in. I envisioned myself as a pro wrestler, even as a young age. And in my mind, or when I was playing with my wrestling action figures and I was making my own little show in the corner of my bedroom, I was in that world. And like I said, that was my happy place, and that's where I could exist and forget about everything that was going on. So that's probably then. And I can't remember the exact age. That would at least be, 9, 10 years old in that age frame. So,
what ways have you seen impact?
Oh, man. So I'll give an example. It's actually a fresh example. We just did some events for a local school, and it was for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, and then the 6th, 7th, 8th graders. And first and foremost, they were screaming like crazy, smiles all over the building, cheering, going crazy. One little part of that, we all give them 5s that they were leaving the gym, and returning to their classes and stuff. And one young kid gave me a little squishy toy. And you're my favorite. I want you to have that. That little moment right there, just means so much. But through that, I got to invite kids to church, the middle schoolers especially. I got to invite them to church, and some came. Like 4 or 5 of them came, and a couple of the high schoolers also from the school. Even though they didn't get to be a part of the wrestling event, they knew what was going on. So they came to the church, and through that, there were several that, including one that gave his life to Christ last night. Wow. So that's fresh. Yeah. That's a in the moment type example I can give, and there's many more that that's just there. Just some simple stuff like a kid that's in the crowd, and kind of like you may not know exactly what's going on at home, but you kind of do know a little bit, and they're there in that moment, they're being entertained, and we'll plan something where all of a sudden we grab the kid's toy wrestling belt and I get hit in the head with it, and that kid remembers that and couldn't find out it's his birthday or something like that, and they get that on video, and they'll remember that, and that just makes an impact that just brightens up their day. Yeah. So it's just stuff like that.
So what does one of these events actually look like for people that haven't known, that haven't seen the footage? What does this look like for? Because I know you do them for youth, you do them for schools, obviously. You do them for fundraising events, but what does the actual event itself look like?
Okay, so there's as I put it, there's different, I should say, versions, different types, I guess. Because you have the actual professional wrestling events. That is like you buy a ticket as a fan to come to the show. You're there as a spectator, a fan that is there to come to be entertained. It's an entertainment outing, and those look more like there's different types too. There's different levels. There's big ones that where you go to, like such as there's the WWE, AEW, Ring of Honor, types like that. And there's also the local indie level, which is where I'm at, more of the local indie level. And even then, you got some that has pretty good production with bright lights and coal sparks and great production and sound system and cameras everywhere. Then you got some that's literally just a ring set up and a curtain. So there's every different version of that. And then you come and you pay your ticket and you're there to be entertained. Now those are just what we call that's just a wrestling show. But there's also the ones like we're going to the school system where it's generated towards, if there's a theme that we're trying to hit, or we're trying to be encouraging, or if it's a reward, or if we're trying to be more of a motivational speaker type situation where the whole entire, even the wrestling is drawn to get their attention, because you may only have 30 minutes to get their attention for the wrestling alone. You got 15 minutes to give a speech.
Yeah.
So, these types of things, you go in there, you're boom, 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 fast action, tell a story, good guy versus bad guy, boom, and then whatever the speaker's giving their message on, whether it be motivational, whether it be doing your best in school, or of course also sharing Christ. Yeah. The ones that we do where we go into churches, they make it look a little different, to where you sit around to a special speaker. And you give that speaker a little more time to give either a testimony or a more closer to a sermon. We also have them where we go into juvenile justice centers, prisons, and things like that, and those are generated to be, again, kind of more fast paced, to have a message being told. Sometimes the wrestling action is, I ain't going to say toned down. It's just there's more of a story trying to be told, and you get to a point, versus drawing the wrestling out.
For which one? For
like the ones that's more like the schools or the juvenile justice centers, because they got to be so, you have a limited amount of time, so they got to be, you're getting these kids' attention. You're especially, say juvenile justice centers, some of them kids, they're there for a reason, and sometimes they're there and you got to do something quick to get their attention, so you can get this to the story that you're trying to share, such as a story of salvation or whatnot, and it all looks different. And those are more private events as well, by the way. Those, of course, the juvenile justice center and the prisons, it's private. But those right there, also, I was going to say, those are more, what's the word I want to use? Say intimate, more meaningful. Yeah. You get a chance to be more one-on-one. And sometimes, even if I'm in the wrestling ring, but I'm connected with the fans as if I'm this close, like me and you are right now, talking. It's almost that type of feeling. So
the organization you're doing that prison stuff with, can you tell me a little bit more about them?
Okay, so that organization is called Hope Wrestling Ministries, or Hope Championship Wrestling. They're based out of Middle Georgia area, but we go all over the Southeast. Most of the prisons and juvenile justice centers we're going to have been based in Alabama, like Montgomery, Alabama. Elba, Alabama was one of the towns we visited. That was a men's work prison. Cool. So that's Hope Wrestling Ministries again, and Marty Miller. I'm giving him some love. Love you, Marty. That's been a vision of his, and in the past, I say close to 5 years now, there's been slightly above 600 salvations.
Wow.
And we've gone in everything from, like I said, the prison, jail, justice centers, to schools, to literally just set up in a yard somewhere in front of a church and have just, hey, let's have a fun day. And we've also done some big events where we brought in legends of the wrestling business to come in and give their testimonies.
Wow.
That's been, doing this for a living for a long, long time, dating back to, the 1980s. We're also about to expand on that, hopefully, to include more of what we're going to call a wrestle church, basically, where there'll be so many matches, and then we'll break down into a church service. We're going to have praise and worship. A pastor actually giving us a full sermon, and then we'll go back to another wrestling match type deal.
That's cool.
And like I said, we're calling that Wrestle Church, and we're actually going to start that in the middle of May.
Really?
It'll be the first event we're doing that on a Sunday afternoon, on May 17th, I believe. My dates are off. So
where's that?
That'll be in Woodbury, Georgia.
Nice.
And if you if you look up any Facebook is Hope Wrestling Ministries or Hope Championship Wrestling, you can find us on every social media platform.
So you're doing this for multiple different nonprofits that are doing
multiple good,
like wrestling charities essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Could you kind of explain and kind of shout out all of them? Because what's crazy is, so you're a wrestler, and so you're connected to what, 4, 5?
So ministry-wise, there's several, but now there's many. Because there's, for those who don't know, that only think of WWE as the only wrestling organization, there's hundreds, if not probably thousands of wrestling promotions all over the world.
Yeah.
In the state of Georgia, there's many. In South Georgia alone, there's quite a few. But it goes to, say, there's the ministry-based and the nonprofit-based or charity-based. There's Hope Wrestling Ministries. There's Guardians Legacy, which is based in the Bay County area, Panama City, Florida, which is ran by a nonprofit called Revolt Ministries. There's also Aware Wrestling that is actually more local. We do stuff here in with Albany and in Newton, Georgia. There is my company, Wrestle South / Hope Wrestling Academy, which is my training facility, where we train actually here in Albany, and we do events locally as well. So those are more of the local ones that pretty much everything we do is tied into ministry or charity of some type.
That is so. I grew up knowing what WWE was, and not really watching, but I knew what it was. My brother watched and enjoyed it and everything. But I think what's so interesting, and there's a whole other world out there that I had no idea even existed. And I think what's cool is you can bring light to not only what's actually happening in all of these other organizations, but also like the lives that are being changed. Mm-hmm. What do you think is something? Well, why do you think that this in particular is connecting to people so well?
Well, pro wrestling as a whole, what pro wrestling really is, it is first and foremost, it's entertainment. It's live action entertainment. And you go there, if you're doing a traditional professional wrestling match, you got a good guy versus a bad guy. And everyone has a hero. They want the hero to win. Everybody sees the bad guy, and they want the bad guy to get beat. They want the bad guy to lose. And in the middle of that match, and what's going on, what the fan is watching, they're seeing two guys go to battle. They see the good guy up, and they see the good guy come back down. They see the bad guy up, and they see the bad guy come back down. And they're waiting for that moment when the good guy finally, just as David took that sling and slung that rock and hit Goliath in the head, they're looking for that moment to finally happen, and then the good guy conquers and wins the match. And I think a lot, especially for us as people, as fans, we look for someone to connect to. And you see that in the wrestler hits the curtain, as we could say, and they make that emotional connection right away. It gives an energy and almost sometimes I look at it like this, is like they get a moment of like, wow, I'm going to live through what's happening right now. I can see myself doing that. And that's also how you end up having a bunch of professional wrestlers, too, because they see that, they grow up and they want to be that, because they want to be their hero. Yeah. And professional wrestling is one of the only sports, and I know it's entertainment, but it's a sport, believe me, it's physical, believe me, that you can watch the guy wrestle. You can see your favorite wrestler right there. And then in a few minutes later, you can go out there, and he can give you a five. He can give you a hug. Or you can go sit there and talk to him at his merch table. You have a conversation with him. Or sometimes, especially if it's local, you can run into that person in town and get up. You don't get to see that or do that a lot with, especially with WWE, but, you do that more with WWE. But I mean, you don't get to do that with the NFL players. You can't, you don't get to sit up there and watch from the stands and get a chance to touch your favorite football player. So in wrestling, you actually get to have a connection with your favorite wrestler, whether it be the good guy or the bad guy. And I play both, by the way, mostly the bad guy actually now. And it's for myself, I'll speak for myself as to, there's something that's just great about going out there and making an emotional connection to whether you got the fans cheering for you like crazy, or if they're booing you like crazy. It's such a rush of adrenaline, and it's so fun, and it's almost something, it is an addiction that's kind of hard to describe. But for anybody that does anything that they love to do, that they're passionate about, and you get that rush from doing it, it's the same thing. And to me, though, there's just something about being able to have that intimate, 200-300 fans, and sometimes less. There are those that happen, that you get to have that connection with. It's just, you just don't get it anywhere else. Yeah.
What's it like being in such a intimate place like a prison and getting to do something that is, I mean, you're getting beat up in front of a bunch of people. You know what I mean? What does that feel like to be in that situation and knowing that there is a message coming along right after that?
For me, knowing that I'm in the ring, and I have to sometimes think back to specific moments, and knowing that sitting out there especially at the juvenile justice centers, and there's a 15-year-old that is going through a lot. And the reason he's there might be a result of many things that caused whatever he done to be there. And he might need something that to focus on getting to the next step in life, and hopefully to get out and hopefully to do better. And we're there coming in, and we're creating this moment in the ring. And I love just being in that moment and knowing that, hey, this could be something that leads to a message that gives a life-changing experience for this person. And being able to present that. Now, it is a little different when you're inside a facility, because by the time, it's different when you got to go through the doors and the gates, and, you got to get wand for the metal detector, and they got to check all your background checks. And then you got these kids that come in, and they're all in the same uniform, and they're, of course, following rules. But once that bell time, as we call it, starts, they're allowed to be kids again. And of course, it is a little different. They got to sit still and stuff like that, but they're allowed to be kids again, and we get to give them that time just to be children again. And sometimes I think, we out here that's outside the gates, these are still kids. In the men's facilities, they're still people, and they deserve the love just as much. And they deserve the opportunity to get their lives correct as well. And in that moment, and knowing what's about to happen and hoping and praying that it is received, and when it is, it puts a smile on my face and puts a smile on my heart, and it's an emotional ride, honestly. I just like to give an example of one that was I think it was like 3 weeks ago. There was 140 teens there, and out of 140, 120 answered the altar call.
Wow.
And I'm not sure the exact numbers, but around 100 were salvations, and then a bunch of other stuff like that. So just knowing that, and then when you see this young man, and some of them, I say young men, and some of them way bigger than I am. Let's be true about that. When you see the emotions on their face, and you see the tears, and you see the fact we get a little bit of time to talk with them afterwards too. And they open up and start kind of telling you a little about their stories, about their situations, of what they can tell. And just know that you possibly just made a little bit of an impact to hopefully get that line straightened out, and they can get out and live a productive life. And also, of course, they're giving their life to Christ. It's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's a feeling that I can talk about, but it's a feeling I don't know how to exactly describe.
I feel like that a lot of times people see Christian-based stuff and think it's a bait and switch. Mm-hmm. Do you think, because obviously the numbers are showing that that's not what's happening.
Yeah.
You're entertaining and informing at the same time. What would you say to the people that believe that what's happening is they're being tricked, or it's a bait and switch, or that is because you have the churches that have all the lights and the smoke and the big shows, and like what Drewski did with making fun of all these giant pastors, which rightfully so, but at the same time, there's still some truth behind.
Yeah.
Some people want to be entertained to a certain extent.
I get what you're saying. So here's the thing. Something that I said recently is, not everything. I don't want to put this. Not everything is Christian, but a lot of stuff turned into Christian. Like I remember a story of you got Christian hikers and Christian bike riders. There's Christian this, and there's Christian that. There's Christian.
Yeah.
And I have nothing wrong with all that. I really don't. But I kind of find out sometimes not everything. Sometimes it's just fellowship. Let's come together. But I look at I hear this. I actually heard this recently. That when it comes to the wrestling part, is wrestling. You can't do that at church. You can't do that because it's unbiblical. Why? Because of what it's fighting. And I know I used this example earlier, but and then this has been a meme lately too, by the way. But I was saying this 10 years ago, probably 15 years ago. David didn't pray for Goliath. So if you look in the Bible, in Genesis 32, Jacob wrestles with God, and that is considered the first ever recorded wrestling match. And that's in the Bible. And so and I say that, and of course, but I get that some people are stuck in the old school traditions. They're stuck in a lot of people, like our church, we have a stage, lights, great sound system, great technology. Technology is a wonderful thing, so it doesn't work. Like the other day when everything was skipping and going crazy, or when I had to call this guy to fix the video for us. Those things are great, but I know a lot of people don't like that. And that's okay. If you don't, that's fine. But there's a lot of people in there that love it, but they're looking past the lights. They're looking at what's being said. They're looking at the praise and worship. They're looking at those things. And, who's right or who's wrong in that? If there's fruit coming from it. if there's fruit coming from it, it's an amazing thing. My thing with the wrestling, we use wrestling as the platform, yes, to bring people to watch an event, to tell them about Jesus. Yes, wrestling is the entertainment part. Yes, wrestling is the platform. Yes, wrestling is what we see, just like a movie. Yes, you watch all that to get to the message. And yes, and the way we do it is sprinkled in throughout. The wrestling matches, the stories that we tell, the songs that are played, or throughout we may have like someone share a little testimony, then we have a small testimony, then have even the main speaker. You use those things to get people there to be able to tell them about Jesus. I think this, and being as a youth pastor, I'm big on talents, and I love for someone to be able to use their talents. As a kid, I heard that, again, wrestling couldn't do that because that's ungodly. But I'm like, well, I love wrestling. I want to be a wrestler one day. And now, I see what wrestling can do. But I tell kids that, if you have a talent, let's figure out a way to use it to glorify to God. Let's figure out a way to use it to grow in life. And let's figure out a way to stay on path to use that, because there's other alternatives they can find, anyone can find. And just like any church, when, I'm sure you've heard pastors say, or people say, you can be anywhere but here. When we go to those wrestling events, those people could be at any other entertainment event, but they're at that wrestling event and they're hearing Jesus being shared through that wrestling event.
Yeah.
And they're hearing a positive message being told at that wrestling event. So that means so much. So what if it's a wrestling ring? What's it matter?
Yeah.
Why do we get caught on that? So what? So what if it's a podcast? If Jesus is being told, if some positive stories are being told, if some love and some hope is being shared, I think it's okay.
And think you end up having more people that would be willing to go to a wrestling match than to church.
Yep.
Oh, I get struck down at church. Lightning would strike me as soon as I walked in there, or whatever the cliche is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they may go to listen to a podcast. They may see a Instagram post. They may go to a wrestling match. And if there has been intention in place in order for them to hear a positive message, if they hear the gospel, their life could change. And I think it's less, in my opinion, it's less important for salvations and more important for people to live Christ-like. You know what I mean?
I get what you're saying.
Like, if you don't have that support system afterwards, who cares? However, if you're in a place to be saved, you're more likely to find. I don't know if that's making sense.
So if you don't mind, I'll use an example of what's going on with my youth ministry and with church. Yeah. And I hate saying mine because it's not mine. And actually my quote that I've said many times, I repeated at church this past weekend, it's their youth group. I'm just along for the ride, and what God does is what God does. We've had many salvations recently. At one point, one night we had like 6 in one night. And this is teenagers coming in of, some first time walking into our church, and giving their life to Christ and rededications and things like that. They have all these great things. And, but recently, and I had a guest speaker last night, and it was funny how this worked out. About a month ago, she attended our youth service. She's like, hey, I want to attend. I said, yes, ma'am, of course. She attended, and my message that night, I spoke on about all the great things that have been going on since the first of this year. And like I said, it was about a month ago. And all the great things, all the salvations, and people giving their testimonies and just the great things. And I said, I looked at everybody and I stopped. I said, that's amazing, by the way. But guess what? I'm going to ask y'all a question. What's next? And then she had the same message. And I remember sitting there looking at her eyes and like, because she had a message that God gave her that was basically that same type of thing. And she shared it like, hey, what's next? And there's a story. You come here, salvation, but what's next? The story, you come to church. Just because you come to church, just because you go to where Jesus doesn't mean that you're saved. Doesn't mean you're living Christ-like. It's just because you came to church and you gave your life to Christ. Well, for one, there's one thing I said: are you picking him up, taking him back with you? So let's keep coming, and we use these tools, these things to get people in the door. Yeah. I don't see nothing wrong with that. Here's the thing: in church, sometimes I do some of these goofiest games I can with teenagers, just to be able to get to the point where they're laughing, they're having a good time, and then boom, we click on the seriousness. And I got them there and I got them engaged. And they're hearing whatever message God's placed in my heart, and there's great things, there's great results that's happened from it, and I'll say that, yes, I even have some lights in my in the youth room, and all these things going on. We play music, we have dance offs, we have all kinds of goofiness. You've been a part of youth ministry, you know what it's like, and have all this going on. But recently, something that I found that I got to the point, and I was like, hey guys, I'm about to close in church about what service, and I'm gonna pray us out. But God laid on my heart, hey, just sit at the altar and just tell everybody, anybody that wants to come have a conversation, they can come have a conversation with you. So go through all the fun stuff and all the church stuff and all that stuff like that. And I'm like, hey guys, I want y'all to know that when I close in prayer, I'm gonna sit right here, and anybody who wants to talk can come up here and just talk with me. I done that. I sat down, and the very first time I done that, it was at our altar. The altars were full of teenagers waiting just to have a one-on-one conversation and just talk and just open up. And in those moments, which was created by the whole entire night, in those moments, I heard first of all, some emotional things. And some teenagers that's gone through a lot at a very young age. And by the way, I promise I wouldn't try to cry on this thing. Well, I told myself not to do that earlier, but if I do, edit that out. But and I did, and some of them opened up, and none of them don't really know me other than I'm Pastor Stephen, the youth pastor at their church. And someone was their very first time meeting me, and they open up, start telling me their stories, and then they give their life to Christ. And since then, I've seen life-changing things happen where they're stepping out and they're sharing their testimonies with other kids their age. They're sharing it with their whole school at events. They're going to other churches and being part of other groups where 6 months ago they weren't doing none of that stuff. And they're inviting their friends to church, and they're getting to their word, and they're getting to prayer time, and they're wanting to know about this person named Jesus Christ, and they're wanting to know how to walk across life, and they don't want the things of their past. Yeah. And I could segue into so many different things, so you might want to stop me as I keep going. But and what's big on, and I keep going with youth ministry right now with teenagers, is they have the life that they experienced, and they see the life that's going on in their lives and with their families and their parents, stuff like that. And something that I've noticed through these conversations open up, that they don't want to be their parents in the sense of they don't want the same mistakes that were made. They want to be able to create and follow Christ and create their own life. And such as they have family members that are addicts or alcoholics, or you name some type of something going on. They don't want to be a part of that. They want to change, and they're fighting to make that change. Yeah. And it gets really hard when you have a 14-year-old or 15-year-old that's being the voice within their household. And so I think of all that stuff, just to be able to sit in that moment and let them have that voice for this little time. I just sit there like this and let them talk. If they ask a question, I answer it. If they want me to speak, I do. If not, I just let them just talk. Let them get it out. Let them have a conversation with it, and then I pray with them and pray for their situation, and pray, of course, that they overcome it all, and pray that change that they're desiring does happen. And guess what? It took me taking whipped cream and gummy worms and letting them eat through it to get all the gummy worms out to get to that moment. But guess what? We got there. And I think it's all a good thing. Yeah.
Do you see a correlation between youth ministry and the wrestling ministry?
Yes. Yes. And because for one, kids are, man, like yesterday at the school event, and anytime we do any church events that center around the teenagers and the young kids and stuff like that, their energy levels are way up here. And some of these kids don't get to, certain areas, they don't get to see nothing ever. Some kids, especially certain places they live in, small town, wherever, they go to school, they go home, they go to school, they go home. There's not much else happening in their lives. So when you're able to bring it to them, it's a great thing. So when they see that, their energy is just like, whoa, what's going on? Especially when they don't know what's happening. Because like yesterday, they didn't tell them nothing. So they walked in, they seen all the stuff going on, the wrestling ring set up and all that stuff like that. So already you go from here to here already. And then boom, the wrestling starts, and they're just going crazy, and the roof's going off the place. I see it in the sense that you have this platform of both times, and you take stuff that, yes, it may be entertainment, yes, it may be to put a smile on their face, like let them laugh, all that stuff like that, but then you get into the serious moments to tell a story. So yes, that's how I see a thing together with it. Is in the end, for me, in the end, my main goal is to spread hope and spread love, and my main goal is to lead people to salvation and lead and help them and nurture a Christ-like life. And so therefore I do see a correlation with both. Looks different, but it's still the same.
Yeah. Similar structure, different format. I
Yeah,
guess.
youth, I'm not beating nobody up.
Well,
Youth group,
maybe you should.
youth group class, I'm not beating nobody up. They might beat me up actually, but I'm not beating nobody up. But it's the same kind of, and I'm not saying church is like that, but I'm just saying like you, in the end, the message that we're getting to is the same. It is. In the end, it's leading people to salvation and teaching them and hoping to nurture and help them grow in a Christ-like life.
Do you see a difference in the way performers are for a mission-driven organization rather than a merely, I don't know what you'd call the other, just
So
the entertainment industry?
Yeah. Yes, and a lot of it's because I'm gonna say how I look at it and how I am for myself, and what I'm also trying to teach. I guess I will, because I'm also in wrestling. I try to be a coach and a trainer, and not that I'm for any wrestler that watches this, and they'll know when I'm referring to this. I'm not calling myself some great know-it-all veteran right now. I know my experience, and I know my place in wrestling, and I know where I'm at. It's kind of like when you accept your calling, you know what you're doing. I feel like I know my place in wrestling. I know what I'm doing, and I strive to be the best at what I do. Well, that being said, so with these moments of like the ministry side, especially with the prisons ministries, the school ministries, things like that, it looks different. Those shows are different. And sometimes you got to throw out the wrestling rule book that we all been taught. Sometimes the moves we do are going to be a little different. Sometimes the what we call the wrestling logic. First of all, wrestling logic, some of it doesn't make any sense anyway, but it makes sense to us because that's what we do. But sometimes we got to throw out that rule book and just know you're going to entertain and have fun. And when guys accept that and understand that, they have so much fun. And a lot of times they remember why we do this. Yeah. Because in the end of the day, I'm still that same 8-9-year-old kid at the end of the day that loved wrestling. I just get to live it. And being able to also be able to give that to the guys, because this ain't just a ministry out, what I would say, front of the house, back of the house, with just the fans and with the crowds or not. This is also for my bros in the back, in the locker room, my brothers and sisters in the wrestling business. I want to help give them a moment that they can go hit that curtain, have a good time, and remember that they love professional wrestling too. Yeah. And they get to enjoy it and be a part of something that they know too, that they just as a part of some kid getting his life changed or something happened positive in a person's life. So it's difficult sometimes when you're putting together, because I got to open up a little bit of wrestling here. Some people are going to fuss at me, maybe. Hopefully not. Wrestling is, the term fake gets thrown out a lot. It's not fake because it hurts. That's why it's not fake. Believe me, right now, my neck is killing me. It's not fake. It is what we call a work. It's two guys working together, or however many guys are in the match, you're working together to present an entertaining match and entertain a crowd. But it does, like I said, it hurts. Years and years of, I don't know if anyone's ever seen a wrestling ring, but it's metal and wood with a little bit of padding. It's like this thin. So it's not like it's a trampoline like people think sometimes. Even the ropes are cable. It's still cable inside those ropes. But with that being said, sometimes, you go in there, you go to have the traditional, what we were trained to do. And you just kind of just have to throw that out a little bit. And like if we do anti-bullying events, some stuff we have to tone down a little bit, because you're trying to teach kids not to fight, actually, not to bully. So you tell a story in a different way that's more entertaining, and they're there just see flashy moves. So you just do flashy moves and make sure that no matter what you do, the kids are out there screaming and having a good time. Yeah. And that is, in those moments, I ain't gonna say it's challenging, but it's getting guys to understand, like, hey guys, we're just here to entertain and have fun, and that's it. It can be kind of challenging, but I love it. It's part of the like I said, the teaching moments that we get to have as well.
Is there a story that really sticks out to you from the years of you doing this, that whether it be someone's life changed or whatever, that sticks out from the years of wrestling?
There's probably quite a few. Because there are tons of stories out there of just great stories of guys like wrestling has changed their lives, even wrestlers, not just the fans, and the positivity it's given in a lot of my own brothers and sisters' lives. But every now and then I'll get some messages of how like a fan was at an event and they like, hey, I had all this going on, but this right here really opened me up. It really helped me out and helped me get through. And then the message that was given really got me getting back on track with my relationship with Christ. I can give several. It's hard to pick one. I know a couple of years ago I had a guy I brought in that I booked to wrestle on the show, and he come to me in tears in his eyes. It's like, man, my grandpa just passed away and all this stuff, and I really had all this stuff going on, and I really needed this today. And it just being able to go out there and just have fun and present this moment. For myself, man, with me, I being able to go out there, like this past February, I had a show, and me and my tag partner, we was in a tag team tournament, and we won the match, and we got a trophy. And he was 7 at the time, he turned 8, but in March, my 8-year-old beat me to the locker room so he can take a picture. You know, those moments right there remind me to keep going and keep doing it. You know, there was recently an event that we had, and a young girl come down for prayer at the altar call, and I don't know how much detail I can go in with some stuff, but she battles with self-harm, and it's something that she's really trying to overcome. So be able to present that moment to pray and hope, you know, those scars that are there, they stay healed. There's not no more fresh ones, to be able to see that. So I hope when we go back there, you know, that it's continuing on, that she's still fighting through that. Man, wrestling gives a lot more than what people realize too. You know, I know a lot of people look at wrestling, especially if they only know WWE and they only know the history of WWE. They think especially the negative sides of it and the bad stuff. But there's a lot of great stuff that comes out of pro wrestling and being pro wrestling fans or pro wrestlers. And there's stories, so many stories of pro wrestling. And I ain't gonna say this is the words some people may use, is saved their lives. In a sense, it gave people something to live for. That's even with fans, because they're so passionate about being a wrestling fan that they have something to live for. Like I said, I'm picturing like friends of mine after matches coming to me with tears in their eyes about certain things and just so many different things. So it's kind of hard to pick one exact story but there's many.
So in what ways does the pro wrestling organizations that you've been working with, in what ways are they meeting communities right where they are?
So there's several ways. So say Guardians Legacy, which is promotion down in Panama City. The ministry nonprofit that runs it is Revolt Ministries. They do a number of things in the community. They go into the school systems where they feed, and I don't know how many thousands of meals it is a year. I know the numbers reaching to 30,000 meals a year, as far as like say pancake breakfasts and other things like that. Every year, this is together with the wrestling group. We do basically like a community picnic during the week of 4th of July. It's usually on the same day as the wrestling show, that Saturday, where there'll be hundreds. We just set up, advertise, and we feed everybody burgers and hot dogs, give away prizes, and they come and they eat. Not only that, they also do things for like the local Air Force down there. There's Air Force Base. They go in, they do stuff, and so much more. The even like say the Coca-Cola company, they go and they do special events for them, and then so much more. And then on top of that, like Aware Wrestling, which I mentioned is more local, and it's which is tied in with my wrestling company as well, with Wrestle South. We do fundraisers and things like that, and benefits for local nonprofits, such as we got one on May 9th, everybody, in Newton, Georgia at Baker County Schools. Starts at 7 o'clock. That's for Helping Mamas of Albany, which every event that we do, we already take up donations such as diapers and wipes from fans, and then they're able to come in free for that if they bring in diapers and wipes donations. But we help raise money for these organizations to keep going. And also, like, you know, when we do a lot of church events, we go to, like this past weekend, we go to the church set up, and they do a block party where they just invite the community. You got food being grilled over here, you got music being done over here, and you got the wrestling, and for about an hour and a half, you have a wrestling event. You have the speaker sharing Jesus, and all these different things going on at one time. And the hope is to bring the community as a whole together. And you know, because a lot of these communities we're going to are how to put it, they're not the greatest of communities, if you will. You know, there's crime, there's all kinds of, there's homelessness, you know, there's drugs and things of that nature inside these communities. So being able to go in there and set up a spot, literally in a parking lot, or sometimes it's in a grassy patch, and boom, and people start seeing the wrestling ring, so it gets their attention, and they stop by, and they're, okay, there's this, there's that, there's all this going on. Then they hear the positive message out of it, and it brings people closer together, and it helps start new relationships, and it helps like the churches and the pastors start relationships with their community, and help or broaden the relationships with their community as well. And there's nothing like, too, by the way, when you go to these places, or you set up, like I say, the community picnics or the block parties, to be able to have these people that wouldn't normally come to anything like that at all, because of they may think that they can't go to stuff. So again, I feel like I can't go to that church on that Sunday, but let me go to this that's happening. Then I hear all this stuff, and then they invite me to church, and that gets them in the door, and that helps encourage them to come.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important. Also, with the community, one of the biggest things reaching the community, one of the biggest things that Guardians Legacy does, or Revolt Ministries does, is they have Stuff the Bus Christmas time every year, where the guy that runs it, Skip, love you, Skip, he literally stays on a bus until they meet their goal of as many as 6,000 toys, or enough toys to give to 6,000 kids, rather. And he does that every year. This past year, or this coming up year will be, I think, the 14th year, maybe 15th. I could be wrong with that number. But they've given out toys of more than 200,000 over the past, roughly 14 to 15 years. And that is big. That is huge. And I know of several other organizations that are local, too, that do, 300 to 400 or 500 and slowly growing every year. That's something that I don't think people realize, that there's so many kids out there that don't have opportunity to have a great Christmas. So being able to be a part of something like that too, do you know that kid, even if you don't see the kid's face, I'm never going to see the kid that open up those gifts. A lot of those times like that, or the Skip and them, they'll never see the kids open. Sometimes they do, but knowing the fact that you helped give that kid, because who doesn't like Christmas presents?
Yeah.
And if you've never experienced not getting Christmas or not getting much for Christmas, that's a sad thing. And knowing that a kid gets to have a great Christmas, that's so dope. And I love being a part of stuff like that.
Yeah. So since you do youth ministry and wrestling ministry, has there been any story that really stands out from just the youth ministry itself?
So through our church, Pierce Church of God, by the way, guys, Pierce Church of God in Pierce, Georgia, that's where I'm youth pastor at. Through there, not only the things that happen within our church and the great stories and testimonies that happened there, we were blessed the opportunity to go to Montana and be a part of a Bible camp as a whole. And I got to be involved with the teenagers there. It's in Eureka, or right outside of Eureka, Montana. Beautiful, beautiful place, by the way. Got to go there, and I didn't know what to expect, and God put a word on my heart, and I actually done some research, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but Montana is in the age group of basically middle schoolers to 18-year-olds, basically, or I think it's 17-year-olds, but suicide and self-harm and some form of depression and mental health challenges in that is very high. They have a very high attempted suicide rate and a very high success rate. That's very big. I didn't know it was really big in that area until I looked it up and seen that, and I was like, wow. And just going there and get to be a part and meet all these people for one, and see the different, even though it's Montana is in the U.S., but it was almost like a whole different culture up there. Again, amazing and wonderful people. The coffee was great, by the way. Get together, and I remember I went and I walked around the lake and looking for this place, and I got to that Wednesday night. We were there for a whole week, and that Wednesday night was the main youth night. And they said, you have anywhere you can do the youth event at. So I remember walking up and going through the mountains and the hills that were right there, and I walked up, and there was basically a mountain chapel. Walked up, and all of a sudden, through a clearing, there's this big, beautiful cross sitting there. And there was old pews that's been there. And this camp is Dickey Lake Bible Camp, by the way. This camp has been there for 100 years or more. I'm not sure exactly the time frame. And many things, many revivals, many things happen at this place. So I seen that, and I'm like, wow, this is it. So I brought the whole youth group that came, the teenagers, all up there, and gave a message, basically my testimony, and talked about wanting to be loved, basically. and reminding the kids that they are loved and there's someone that loves love them, and that's God. And I did touch on some stories and some deep stories, and I also had one of our great youth girls, because we were there as a group and we had a few of our teenagers and stuff like that there to help out, and she gave her testimony and about self-harm and things of that nature, and got to talk about that. And then we had the altar call, and I remember praying for this young man specifically. And then we finished up the service, and this young man come up to me, and he was like, he come out and he had his arms like this, and there was marks. And he said, I know I don't have to do it no more. And that moment right there, it's just like, wow, and there is just like with anything, and for yourself, when you run nonprofits and ministries and things like that, there's stress and there's things that go along with this stuff like that. But in that moment, that it's all worth it. That you're making an impact, and you're getting to see that, and you feel the emotion. And it's an amazing thing to see that this 14, 15-year-old young man has a life-changing experience, and knowing and honestly praying and hoping and knowing that happened and it continues on. It's so dope. It's so dope. And I could put it in, I could say so many words, but really putting it into that word is kind of hard to express that feeling. And on top of that, I hoped to, there was several kids that come up. There was a young lady that come up to me. She said, your voice reminds me of my dad. And I was like, I didn't know what to say. And she's like, no, it reminds me of my dad, because she was originally from South Carolina, I believe, the Carolinas anyway. And we have a distinct type of Southern accent where we're from. They asked for subtitles when we talked, by the way, while we were up there. So it was hilarious. But she said, it reminds me of Dad, because she had been separated from him for practically all her life through adoption and things like that. And just being able to hear that my voice just speaking helped get her through something that she was struggling with that night. And that she also had she also prayed and got rededicated to Christ. And just knowing that, simply just hearing your voice, and that's all it took, it boom, sparked an emotion. And sometimes, for anyone that's doing ministry, for anyone that has anything they want to do, if not everybody can be a wrestler, and I get that. Not everybody wants to be a speaker or a pastor or a preacher or a youth pastor. Not everybody has a talent to sing or play an instrument. There's opportunities out there. God presents opportunities in many different ways. And that moment, all I did was just speak. And a young lady's life was impacted just by hearing my voice. Not that my voice is something great, but it impacted something in her life that brought a memory back, that she hit an emotional spark, and boom, next thing she's crying her eyes out to Jesus. So anyone that's out there, if God's calling you to do something, you can't figure out what it is. It could be simply just to talk to somebody, just to share some words with somebody, and you don't know what could happen from that moment. Yeah. And I'll say this, I'll pray for anyone that's out there, you find your calling, because I think that, I don't know if anyone's out there that's really thinking about this right now, that, hey, I'm searching for my spot in ministry. I'm searching for my spot, what God wants to do with me. And I pray for you to find it, and I hope you find it. And believe me, sometimes all it takes is just talking.
What's the biggest challenge of a nonprofit in the entertainment industry?
The profit. Well, I know. The biggest challenge, actually, what we come across, especially in, I say, the wrestling world, because that's the entertainment part I'm a part of. And there's other branches of that, where it be music or whatnot. And we also, by the way, we do work with some Christian hip hop artists and Christian music artists as a whole. Some of the biggest challenges that I think I found is places have been burned by other organizations. I don't want to really say something bad here, but it's kind of like, some places are not on the up and up, and it hurts the ones that try to be. There are a lot of organizations, and even some wrestling organizations as a whole, that have burnt some bridges for everybody in some places. And I'm not trying to, again, throw shade at no one, but sometimes people don't understand, especially when they look at wrestling, they just think wrestling. And even if they've already met other independent wrestling companies, they still think it's just all pro wrestling. They don't separate the companies. They don't even identify if it's a ministry or not. They just hear wrestling, and that's all they think of. So there's been times where it's hard to get in organizations, or hard to get in buildings because of other promotions organizations. It's hard to get in some of the school systems. We actually we were supposed to go into a prison recently again, a men's facility, and some new rules they made and some more red tape they put up, we couldn't get through at the last minute. It just happened, so we had to cancel it. You know, those are some of the challenges that happen, but you just have to just roll with it and just not get discouraged. That is one of the easiest things for me as someone that surprisingly does so much that I do through the different ministries and wrestling and youth pastor and all that stuff like that. I'm very discouraged. I battle with that a lot, and I have to push through it. And that's one thing that will happen is if you keep getting told no, keep getting told no, just keep going to search for that yes, because it will happen, and you do what you can with that yes. But yeah, again, that's the biggest challenge is, man, when other people mess it up for other people. It does hurt sometimes.
How do you stay determined and endure through moments like that?
Knowing that being able to give the opportunity once it's given, you'll be able to showcase everything when you have that chance, knowing that it will make an impact. I remember when I first started doing the first ministry stuff I started doing, I remember being in a sit down kind of like an interview, not a podcast. This is before podcasts were a thing, by the way. I've been doing it that long. But I remember sitting and talking to a pastor gentleman years and years ago, and I was like, it wasn't a success. And he said, well, define success. And I was looking at it as all the no's and all the finances that I lost and all the things like that. And he's like, well, what were you doing it for? I said, well, to tell people about Jesus and spread some love and hope and this and this and that and that. And he's like, well, did you? And I was like, oh, yeah, I did. He said, so define success. And he's like, and now I look back on that because I feel like I was a dumb kid then, even though I was an adult. And I look back now and I'm like, no matter what, just keep going and look for those moments, because success is the fruit of it. The salvation is the good stories, the people that overcome stuff, the laughs, the cheers, the boos, the smiles. That's the success. And everything else God's will take care of. And I just had to trust to put it in God's hand and let him have it. Is it hard sometimes? Yeah, very much so. But you just have to just be able to come to that, and realize that God's got it and he will bless it. You put the work in, you do it true to the passion and the calling that God's placed on your heart, God will take care of it. If
everything were to go right the next 5 years, what would that success look like?
Whew, man, I ain't really thought about that. And the reason why I ain't thought about that is because there's having so many things, my goal, I don't know if I really have a set goal, but for one, I would love to be able to just see more and more people impacted. The number, just in one ministry alone, there's been over 600 salvations. But you don't know through all the different organizations that I'm a part of and all the different events that I've been a part of, you don't know what you've done and how many seeds have been planted and how much of an impact. Some of that stuff you'll never see, but you just got to just know it's there. And there's several things I would love to do. I would love to, just an example, since we're near Albany, is have an event where we're putting on an event that's a Christ-centered wrestling event in a building the size of Albany and pass it out. I would love to see that, so that many people that are wrestling fans get to hear Jesus. Things like that. But at the same time, if it's only 15 people, if someone's coming to Christ, someone's getting something in their life that's changing, that's what I want to see. I don't even think about, can I be truthful and say, would I love to be able to do this for a full-time living? Yes, I would. But I love it now, and I'm good to keep going the way that we are. And just, I would love to have more and more opportunities. I will say this. Yes, I said this last night and the other night because of the wrestling events that we did. That was so great. And then it spilled over into the church and all the great things that happened in church. I said, if I could live the movie Groundhog Day, from the old movie from the 90s, where he lives the same day over and over again, if I could pick a day through ministry-wise, through everything with wrestling and with church and all that, I'd pick yesterday and live that. So, and I say all that to say, like, if I could have days like that and those days keep coming, there's more, man, that, to me, that's the best part.
Yeah.
And that's what I look forward to.
I heard someone say that try to find something that you would do for free, mm-hmm. and do it for as long as you can. Mm-hmm. Like this right here, I'll do for free. Mm-hmm. I basically do.
Yeah, I feel you.
And I love it.
Yeah.
I would do this every day if I could.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's what I love. So, what if somebody wants to get connected to your ministry, to your mission, to your vision? What's the first step they should take?
Well, for each individual organization, I'll start with that way. Guardians Legacy is on Facebook. That's the best way to connect with them. There's also a website, guardianslegacy.com. Hope Wrestling Ministries, Facebook, also a website. Aware Wrestling, easiest way is Facebook again. That's about the easiest way if you can't tell.
Facebook for all of them?
Pretty much. Yeah. And then, and through the Facebooks, the ones that have websites, you can find the websites and go through there. But one of the best ways is to, of course, find a Facebook, look for advertisements, and connect with us. Come talk to us at the shows. The other pages like Wrestle South, Facebook as well. Me personally, I'm on social media. Now, I'm Stephen McMillan. That's my real name. Wrestling, though, I am Logan Stevens. And you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. I probably answer or deal with more with Instagram than I do Facebook at that point because all the other Facebooks I'm a part of. But you can find this all through all social media platforms that way.
Logan Stevens on all?
Logan Stevens 413.
Cool.
On you can that's Instagram and Facebook. Logan Stevens 413.
And your next show is?
My very next show. Wait, hold on. What date is it? My very next show is actually is it May 2nd, the first Saturday of May, with Guardians Legacy down in Panama City at Rosenwald High School. Awesome. So if you're in that area, come see us. If you would like tickets in advance, you can visit the Facebook and then the website and purchase tickets in advance. There's VIP tickets where you get a few little special amenities. There's always giveaways and things of that nature. There's merchandise to sell that helps. And every single thing there, all these things, even with Hope Wrestling, and we have a book as well, by the way. I don't think I've mentioned it. Marty Miller put a book out. It's got testimonies from, I don't know how many wrestlers, like 20 or 30 wrestlers in it.
Wow.
All those things you purchase goes right back into the ministries to help keep them going.
Yeah.
That's the main thing, to help fund them and help improve them as we go.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time today.
Yeah, bro. Thank you.
It was fun.
Cool.
That was easy, right?
Yep.